Hi everyone, this is Arsh. So in this video, we have with us Arpit Bhayani sir. Matlab, he has worked with multiple different companies and he has a varied experience across multiple different domains. He has worked with Amazon. Currently, he's working with Unacademy. And we have got him here for discussing something related to system design because I get a lot of questions ki, sir, how to approach a system design question? मतलब अगर कुछ इंटरव्यू में कोई क्वेश्चन पूछता है तो सोचना कैसे है? तो बेसिकली इस वीडियो में हम वही चीज डिस्कस कर रहे होंगे कि what should be your approach to a system design question by taking a very simple example. तो वीडियो स्टार्ट करने से पहले आई वुड लाइक टू हैव अ ब्रीफ इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ सर.
Thanks so much, Arsh, for having me. Like, fabulous. बहुत मजा आता है तुम्हारे वीडियोस देख के. I definitely get to learn something every time. But काफी सही
थैंक
है. So yeah, a very quick intro of mine. My name is Arpit. Graduated in 2012. Then worked for a year. Then did my masters from Triple IT Hyderabad. Right now I'm working as a director of engineering, but still very hands-on. Still a hardcore engineer at heart. बहुत मजा आता है. Like I still can't live without code. So I do that. Prior to this, worked at Amazon, Practo. I've been very fortunate throughout my career to have worked on some really amazing systems right from Practo. I started as a platform engineer slash DevOps engineer, then moved to data pipelines at Amazon, built some fancy system there. Then moved to an academy for like I have joined an academy in 2018, February, and worked on search, notification, backend systems, gamification, now leading team with it has been a fabulous journey throughout my career. Like I have lived every single day like really happily throughout my life, like basically throughout my career. So I've been very fortunate throughout it. So yeah, that's a very
यू.
brief intro of one. Yeah.
ग्रेट 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 टॉकिंग टू यू सर एज ऑलवेज. तो मतलब आई वाज गेटिंग मेनी क्वेश्चंस रिलेटेड टू सिस्टम डिजाइन, तो मैंने कहा कि क्यों ना आई शुड गेट somebody who has been into this and who has experienced this, somebody who comes with an experience of so many years. तो how would like आपने इंटरव्यूज लिए भी होंगे, you
Hmm.
have worked upon these systems, तो from your perspective एक स्टूडेंट से क्या एक्सपेक्टेशंस होती हैं अगर वो इंटरव्यू देने जाता है, एंड सिस्टम डिजाइन में क्या कुछ ऐसी इंपॉर्टेंट चीजें हैं दैट वन शुड स्टार्ट. तो अब सिस्टम डिजाइन की अगर हम बात करें, लेट्स से यू टेक मी एज अ लेमैन.
Hmm.
तो फॉर मी एज अ लेमैन, अगर हम कोई सिस्टम को उठाएं तो
Hmm.
हाउ शुड आई अप्रोच एनी सिस्टम डिजाइन क्वेश्चन, या फिर इंटरव्यू में अगर मुझसे कोई सिस्टम डिजाइन से रिलेटेड क्वेश्चन पूछे तो
Hmm.
मेरी अप्रोच क्या होनी चाहिए. जैसे बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस आते हैं, लेट्स से डिजाइन ट्विटर, डिजाइन टिंडर, डिजाइन दी
Hmm.
स्ट्रीमिंग ओटीटी प्लेटफॉर्म्स जैसे हॉटस्टार, एमपीएल, कुछ भी.
Hmm.
तो व्हाट शुड बी माय अप्रोच टुवर्ड्स दिस, तो हम वही डिस्कशन कर रहे होंगे इस पर्टिकुलर
Hmm.
वीडियो में. एंड यू शुड कंसिडर मी एज अ लेमैन कि मुझे कुछ नहीं आता है, आई एम अ
Yeah.
कंप्लीट फ्रेशर. तो
Yeah.
मुझे कैसे इस चीज को हैंडल करना है.
Definitely. So, in general, uh, just before we go into how to approach that part, just a simple thing, just a simple caveat. So, it's easy for people to throw a big system at you. Hey, design Hotstar or basically design Tinder or basically XYZ. So that's where basically setting up the right expectation is really important. Now here we have two approaches. The first approach that is that are you doing it for the sake of interviews or are you doing it for the sake of learning? So now what I'll do is the way I'd be basically taking you on that journey. I'll be being very explicit uh, when I'm actually conveying that same information. Ki sochna kaise hai, right? So I'll just
हम्म.
quickly share my screen. It might look like a lecture, but it is, trust me, it's not. It will be quite fun. But I just want you to get on the journey to understand how people typically think about any problem statement which is thrown at them, be it at workplace, be it in the interview, and just in general, how should we approach it, right? So,
श्योर
uh,
सर.
yeah. So the idea here is pretty simple. Like obviously, the title says it's system design framework, and hence I actually put it in double quotes. It is not actually a framework that works everywhere, but it would work in most cases, right? One thing that you should be aware of is think about implementation every single time. Most people think system design as something ki, hey, I want to build a system, so isko banana kaise hai? They'll immediately start drawing boxes. But much more than that, think about how do you implement that? Because as soon as you do it, things start to become very interesting and you'll be in a much better position to answer it. So let me think like let me take you on a journey कि let's say एक problem statement है कि हॉटस्टार बनाना है, right? कि चलो हॉटस्टार बनाते. So when you think about this, Hotstar as a problem or Hotstar as a platform is a gigantic platform. So it cannot
Hmm.
be ekdam straightforward ban jayega, right? So case number one, you have never used that product. Quite possible. Like let's say someone says you, hey, let's build Tinder. It's quite possible you have never used Tinder, right? So पहली step, be it interview, be it technical discussion, anywhere, understand the product. If you don't know, ask those questions. कि यार करता क्या है product, right?
Hmm.
This is basically a step zero. Engine as a zero indexing strategy, right? So then step number one, list down the functionality. This is where the problem starts. That hey, people like when someone says, hey, let's design Hotstar, even they are not sure what to like. What do they want to converge on? कि करना क्या है? So that is where
Hmm.
your first step should be कि if like now that you have understanding of the product in Hotstar as a user, as a consumer of the product, क्या क्या फंक्शनलिटीज है सिंपल लिखो क्या फंक्शनलिटी हॉटस्टार में तुम क्या करते हो ऑथेंटिकेशन वंस आर ऑथेंटिकेटेड यू कैन इधर सर्च यू कैन सी योर फीड एक आधे आइटम पे क्लिक करके यू कैन स्टार्ट स्ट्रीमिंग राइट these are the mota mota four functionalities that you have right so
Hmm.
now then comes the second step key what's the scope of the discussion key does your interviewer or even in a technical discussion at your workplace does he or she wants you to either deep dive into one or he also wants you to cover ki, hey, what all functionalities could there be. Right? And this is really important for you to know so that you use your time well, be it interview, be it
Hmm.
workplace. Right. So this is where you need to understand ki karna kya hai, expectations kya hai. Otherwise, you may go in this direction, that direction, and not converge upon anything. Right?
Hmm.
Then step number three is if you are like if the person says hey let's cover everything let's see because as a fresher you are not expected to know a lot of depth but you can think on कि क्या क्या पॉसिबिलिटीज है क्या क्या मतलब क्या क्या चीजें लगेगी मुझे कैसे माइक्रो सर्विसेज बन सकती है राइट so
Hmm.
if that is what the expectation is prepare it it's a tree so you do a breadth search कि I'll start with authentication, then search, then feed, then this. तब मैं थोड़ा 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 करो and then जितना जब तक इंटरव्यू चल रहा है तब तक करते जाओ breadth first so that interviewer knows that you have enough breadth that you can design or you can think about system. And if someone says कि नहीं चलो deep जाते if someone wants you to explore in deep do a depth first search मतलब वो नाम सूट कर जाता है इस केस पे but हाँ do a depth first search right okay now that out of the picture, now in any case, you would have to know how to design that one component. So now, let's say we would want to design it. Now, obviously, there are also steps that you need to take when designing it. So let's say we take an example of search. Search आपने use किया है Google search, Hotstar का search, Netflix search, Prime search, anything. So let's take search as an example.
Hmm.
Now when we do that, अब क्या आएगा first step. Now here people start like basically people start panicking कि अब क्या बोले ये भी करना है इसमें basically we'll do auto complete this and that and that and that. Don't overwhelm yourself. Take it slow. Start with input output. सबसे सिंपल होता है start with input output. So draw a search box. You have your user and कहीं कुछ तो database होगा उसका. Right. So now
Hmm.
you have a search box. Now define what's your input and what's your output. In case of Hotstar, the input is you are given a text query, right? And in response, you are going to what you'll get movies for that query, shows for that query, and anything what they have to offer, right? And
Yeah,
obviously, from where would they pick it up? Database.
from the database.
कुछ तो database होगा, right? जब अब हमें पता है कि कोई तो database होगा, तो what's the next logical step? The next logical step is input हो गया, output हो गया. Search, what would be the next possible step? What's the protocol? Like, how
Protocol.
would your user talk to this system? Right? So, like, the way we are going is step by step. Right? पहले एक बेसिक डब्बा बना लिया यूजर बना लिया डेटाबेस बना लिया दैट्स द इजीएस्ट थिंग टू स्टार्ट विद अब एक चीज पे
Hmm.
कन्वर्ट करेंगे तो
Hmm.
विल डिजाइन अ
मतलब
प्रोटोकॉल
सर एक
हम्म
एक क्वेश्चन मतलब लेट्स से अब सर्च वाली चीज है अब कुछ
हम्म
लोग दे आर कंफ्यूज जैसे हमने नॉर्मल डेटा स्ट्रक्चर्स में स्ट्रिंग मैचिंग एल्गोरिथम्स पढ़ी होती हैं
हम्म
राइट तो
हम्म
वो वाली फंक्शनैलिटी एक्सप्लेन करने लग जाते हैं रेदर देन गोइंग इनटू द डेप्थ तो वो किस पॉइंट पे हाउ शुड आई जज कि मुझे क्या एक्सप्लेन करना है क्या चीजें फॉरवर्ड रखनी है क्या चीजें नहीं फॉरवर्ड रखनी
अंडरस्टैंडिंग
वो
द
पहले
स्कोप ऑफ
उससे
इंटरव्यू
उससे डिस्कशन में
बहुत
कंफर्म करना है.
बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. Be it interview, be it anything else, understand the scope, and which is exactly why this becomes at like super critical. Because if you
हम्म.
think about interview, you have at max 60 minutes. 60 मिनट में से पहले 5 मिनट तुम्हारा इंट्रो और मैं प्लस 3 मिनट में उसका इंट्रो, तो 7 मिनट गए.
हम्म.
आखिरी के 10 मिनट फॉर क्वेश्चन, 17 मिनट तो गए.
हम्म.
बचा कितना टाइम? रफली 40-43 मिनट.
ट्रू.
40-43 minutes में you need to, like, the most important part is understanding the scope. That's why, so that you don't diverge into directions that
हम्म.
the interviewer is not expecting you to go, right?
हम्म.
So but that's a great point. As a fresher, like, interviewer might not expect you to know high level company, but he or she might expect you to know data structure. So then he or she might
हम्म.
ask ki, chalo search mein give me the data structure that you will be using. So again,
हम्म.
understanding the expectation.
ट्रू.
राइट. तो
ट्रू.
वो चीज बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. सो दैट्स वेयर क्लैरिफिकेशंस ले लो, बट बहुत ज्यादा भी मत करो दैट यू वेस्ट 15 मिनट्स आस्किंग फॉर क्लैरिफिकेशंस बिकॉज ही और शी वांट्स यू टू डाइव डीपर इनटू समथिंग, राइट?
ठीक है.
ओके.
बिल्कुल.
सो दैट इज सॉर्टेड देन. नाउ
So before we move ahead with this video, I would like to talk about interview series that is being conducted by Geeks for Geeks. It's basically a free test that is being conducted every Sunday at 7 p.m. where you can prepare for top tech giants, and along with that you can earn geek bits that will give you additional rewards that you can redeem later on. So let's check out the interview series that is being conducted this particular week. That is interview series 67. So in this particular interview series, you can check here, like, it's going to be a contest where you'll be getting 3 questions and 100 marks. So it is going to start on 11th September from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Definitely you should, like, apply for this if you're preparing for that mock test. If you want to have that experience beforehand on how your exact company test would look like, so this can be a good opportunity. I would recommend each and every one of you to apply for this mock test, for this mock series, for these interview series. It's completely free of cost. You don't need to pay anything. You can click on the link in the description below and apply for it right now.
when your user is interacting with your system, you need to decide कि कौन से प्रोटोकॉल पे करेंगे, because there are lots of options. Now this is where
Hmm.
it's again very important to know कि options कौन से available है. So this is where your preparation step comes in, that hey, for my user to talk to your system, it can be over HTTP, it can be over WebSocket, it can be a gRPC, right? You need to know कि क्या क्या, कि basically क्या क्या possible है, right? So that you can take those right calls. And then once that is decided, in most cases this would be HTTP. Unless it's chat or real time, then it will be WebSocket. But
Websites.
a gRPC as a fresher, if you don't dive, that's also fine. But good to know that something like that exists. Right? Okay. So that's sorted. Communication wala part done. So we go with REST-based endpoints and we'll sort that out things from there. Then comes the next part.
Hmm.
From left to right, we decided communication. What's the next that we yet to decide? Database. कौन सा लेना है? So this is where the things come in, that hey, for a requirement or for a functionality, is there something which is more suited for that specific use
Hmm.
case? सर्च
Hmm.
के लिए कोई ऐसा डेटाबेस है क्या जो मैं यूज कर सकता हूँ? गूगल इट. यू मे नॉट नो विच डेटाबेस एग्जिस्ट. गूगल इट. गूगल विल टेल यू 10 different options. And obviously you will know कि ऐसा ये सुना सुना लग रहा है, so let me use that. So in most case, you would hear the term Elasticsearch, which seems like a
Hmm.
database optimized for search, and you are building search, so that becomes a natural choice. So chalo Elasticsearch डाल दिया, right? So now you have decided protocol, some dabba which would be your API server accepting the request and whatnot, and a database. So यहाँ तक के sort हो गया. अब even till this stage, interviewer would be quite impressed that the way you are approaching it is very structured. In most
Hmm.
cases, क्या problem क्या आती है? That you think, जैसे even the question that you asked us कि ये भी करना है, ये मुझे data structure में जाना है, ये करना है, वो करना है, पता नहीं है. But following this step by step makes you very aware. Like, it impresses the interviewer that hey, your thought process is quite structured, and that is very important. Okay. तो यहाँ तक के अपन पहुंच गए, डेटाबेस डिसाइड हो गया. अब क्या?
बिल्कुल.
इतने पे थोड़ी ना खत्म होगा, क्योंकि सिस्टम डिसाइड है, आगे तो कुछ लेके जाना पड़ेगा. बट दिस इज वेयर द नेक्स्ट स्टेप स्टार्ट. अब यहाँ पे इफ यू थिंक अबाउट इम्प्लीमेंटेशन, will your search service only have this much? Now, who will put the data in Elasticsearch? Someone has to put the data in to make it queryable. That is what I say. Implementation के बारे में सोचो. When you think about implementation, you'll automatically realize, hey, someone has to put the data in Elasticsearch. So now that would be the next component that you would design. So asking those critical questions, right? अब यहाँ पे दो तरीके हैं. एक तो पहला क्या आ गया कि your service itself is responsible of populating the data in Elasticsearch. Let's say authentication service. So create user भी auth service पे ही है, get user भी auth service पे ही है. So then you don't need anyone else to populate the data in, right?
That is auto.
Right. तो वो पूरी responsibility उसी service की हो गई. And that is easier. So you don't have to think about anything else. But if you think about search as a use case, is search the one who is putting the data in? No, because content कोई और create कर रहा है. Maybe a content service which is storing all the movies and TV shows and whatnot. So what you'll need to pull the data out from this database and put it into Elasticsearch. Who will do that? Some data pipeline, right? So then you would have a content service, a content database, someone pulling out of this DB and putting it into this. So ये database अपने आप जादू से तो database पे नहीं डालेगा. There would be a component sitting in between, right? And this is how your system would slowly evolve. So we started with very basic, but then we kept thinking about implementation, and we went step by step, making it complex. But throughout the journey, everything was structured. जैसे हमने लिया, ये हो गया, thinking about implementation, that helps. Now just a small extension on this. Let's say someone said कि, hey, now search में I need to have, let's say, autocomplete feature. अब search API में autocomplete तो होगा नहीं. So you might need, or you may need to have some sort of analytics on top of search. So you might add one more component around recommendation or analytics and whatnot. So again, as you think of more and more features, see if you want to do it in this one service, or you may need another component to do on its own. Again, step by step, right? Rather than सीधा drawing boxes, it's always better to go for a structured approach, right?
True.
So what we went for is how we thought about implementation at all times, and that is extremely important, right? And obviously I've not gone into the engineering details of it, but every single decision we made is a lecture in itself. And then you can obviously Google about a lot of stuff to read about it. But what I really wanted to convey was how are we structuring this information and how are we conveying this information to the interviewer / your technical, right? But everything else remains the same. Yeah,
yes sir.
please shoot your question.
बेसिकली हाँ, मतलब जब हम बोलते हैं कि लो लेवल डिजाइन कर रहे हैं हम किसी चीज का, राइट, तो उसमें हमें बोला जाता है कि यू मेक क्लासेस. तुम मतलब इंटरव्यू बोलता है कि यू राइट द कोड फॉर 5 क्लासेस. मतलब जैसे ये 5 फंक्शनैलिटीज है, 5 क्लासेस बनाओ एंड राइट डाउन हाउ दैट वुड वर्क. सो for that kind of an interviewer, usko should we like explain the entire thing, uske baad should we go ahead and write those functionalities, write that code, yeah, like what should be that approach? matlab uske liye if somebody
itna time nahi hoga. If it's a system design round, when you think about it, if you're either you can go into high level or you can go to low level details. Both are very hard. 40 minutes mein you can't cover it all, right? Again, understanding the scope of discussion really important, really important, right? कि उसको क्या expectation है, because if he or she is actually stressing more on low level part, do that. Don't go into high level part, but obviously while writing code you may need to explain it. But if he or she is also expecting कि इतना होने के बाद में if you like will also implement something or you'll write code for something, then ask him or her, like depending on the time left, कि कौन सा कोड लिखना है. बिकॉज बहुत बेसिक कोड लिखा वो भी नेगेटिव जा सकता है, और बहुत फैंसी लिखने गए और उतना टाइम बचा नहीं, बोलेगा कि ये भी खत्म नहीं कर पाए, राइट? सो लाइक अंडरस्टैंडिंग द स्कोप इज रियली इंपॉर्टेंट.
And like if I would say ki if you are taking an interview, let's say, so what are the top 3 things you would see in a candidate so that he's given a go ahead?
Structured approach. Top three: structured approach, structured approach, structured approach. Trust me on that. Because you know what happens is, in most cases, people panic. Be it in
Hmm.
the interview, be it at the workplace. वर्कप्लेस पे ऐसे एम्प्लॉयज चाहिए होते हैं जो थोड़े सुलझे हुए हो. फॉर एग्जाम्पल प्रोडक्शन आउटेज
Hmm.
हो गया, यू इफ यू आर पैनिक तो फिक्स कौन करेगा? राइट. तो
Hmm.
दैट इज वेयर यू हैव टू बी वेरी लेवल हेडेड कि अच्छा, ये करना है, ये करना है, ये करना है, एंड यू हैव टू बी द वन हु इज डिसएम्बिगुएटिंग द थिंग. तो स्ट्रक्चर्ड अप्रोच में दैट ऑलवेज हेल्प.
Got it.
राइट. सो दैट
So
इज
I
वेरी
believe
इंपॉर्टेंट.
मतलब ये कॉन्सेप्ट फ्रॉम अ पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू ऑफ फ्रेशर काफी अच्छे से समझ आ गया, मुझे एटलीस्ट समझ आ गया बहुत अच्छे से, एंड आई बिलीव ऑडियंस को भी बहुत अच्छे से समझ आ जाएगा हाउ टू अप्रोच अ पर्टिकुलर सिस्टम डिजाइन प्रॉब्लम, या अगर तुमसे कुछ भी पूछा जाता है तो तुम्हें सोचना कैसे है, बेसिकली इस वीडियो का पर्पस मेन वो था। अब उसके बाद सर मतलब लेट्स से इफ वी मूव, इफ समबडी गेट्स इंटरेस्ट इनटू दिस, अगर वो और सीखना चाहता है तो व्हाट ऑल रिसोर्सेज डू यू फील आर अवेलेबल फॉर दिस, लाइक फॉर फ्रेशर्स पर्टिकुलरली, अगर फ्रेशर्स को स्टार्ट करना है तो कौन कौन सी ऐसी चीजें हैं, मतलब कुछ ऐसे प्री रिक्विजिट्स हैं, या शुड लाइक एनी वुड वन शुड स्टार्ट इट एज इट इज, तो व्हाट शुड बी दोज रिसोर्सेज एज पर यू?
ओके. तो system design is extremely fascinating because you use those systems day in and day out. तो तुम्हें वो चीज कर तो वो चीज जानने में भी मजा आता है, राइट.
हम्म.
बट if you directly jump into something advanced engineering, you'll feel lost, you'll feel dejected, you'll think कि मेरे को कुछ नहीं आता. Start small, right? So the way I break down this is that it breaks down into three phases: 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and 10 to 100, right? So if you're just starting out, 0 to 1 is your phase, right? So 0 to 1 is your phase, maybe split it. 0 to 1, to go in system design phases from 0 to 1, you should definitely start from going from 0 to 0.1. 0.1 is your phase when you know basic programming, right?
हम्म.
Then point 1 to point 5 जाओ. Point 1 to point 5 is where you'll go into कि CRUD लिख दिया, you build your own, let's say, a simple library management system, you know what database is, what cache is, that's it. And then from
हम्म.
point 5 to 1 is where you go by watching YouTube videos. Like basically, like basically Gaurav has amazing playlist on system design. Go through those. He has done an amazing job in ensuring that it's extremely simple for people to go from 0 to 1, and in some cases even beyond that, right? That is
हम्म.
extremely great playlist for anyone to get started. But in any case, always think about implementation. Most people think system design is theoretical. Not at all, because those are real systems. They are true, right? So that is where it's extremely important to implement something. Hello world is saying implement it, right? But that's how you'll go from 0 to 1, right? Watching YouTube videos, great way to do it, right? And then थोड़ा थोड़ा पढ़ते रहो इधर उधर से, समझ में आएगा. कहीं पे भी स्टक हो, गूगल इज द बेस्ट. Then maybe thoda experience aa jaye, you are well versed with all the basic stuff and all. Now if you want to go to the next level, that's where comes in conference video, like basic InfoQ conference है, go to conferences है, right? YouTube पे tech conferences के videos देखो, and start reading engineering blogs published by great companies like Hotstar के blogs है, Myntra के blogs है, Grofers के blog है. So many reads. Just search for engineering blogs, you'll find a ton of resources there, right? And that would take you from 1 to 10. And then from 10 to 100 is where you need to read research papers, where you need to go into the source code of databases to understand how they function, to and obviously have very wild production grade system ke, experiences. Like for example, imagine being part of a Hotstar team during that India versus New Zealand semi-final match. वो practical experience कोई match नहीं कर सकता, right?
हम्म.
So you need to be part of that to actually see how that happens in real world. But obviously, to know that kind of depth, you have to be extremely curious. That's where थोड़ा सा research paper लगेगा, थोड़ा सा इधर का तड़का लगेगा, and as a combination, you'll reach from 10 to 100. But 0 to 1, 1 to 10, again, structured thinking really important. Otherwise, you'll get lost in all the chaos that's out there. And yeah,
Got
that's
it.
how I would recommend people to do it.
Great, great, great. So, matlab, I believe ki this is something that was very much needed for anyone who is starting up with system design. I'll link some of the channels in description from where you can go through from various playlists. Also, Arpit sir has his own YouTube channel where he teaches maybe for somebody who has been into industry, but if you are more interested into the subject, you can definitely go and check that out. You will find some content relevant to you. But once you are into this industry for 2 years, 3 years, definitely you will have to be there at any cost. So thank you so much, sir, once again for coming here and like explaining me about this entire framework. It was so insightful. Thank you so much once again.
Thanks so much, Arsh, for having me. It was fab, fab.